Hello and welcome to another episode of the Corporate Etiquette, a show where we break down the corporate world so you can make better sense of it. My name is Laura, and today I want to talk about how to professionally cover your ass. Jokes aside, this video is actually about how to properly raise concerns with your upper management and potentially even whistleblowing. The source of inspiration for this video is actually an article published in the Wall Street Journal, which I will also link in the description down below so you can read it for yourself, and it is about the Volkswagen carbon emission scandal. To quickly summarize the article, they report that Volkswagen had been misreporting their carbon emission for, I believe, the past decade in over 11 million cars. This, of course, prompted them to be subject to a lot of fines and a lot of other penalties. And while the article states that there is not one person to blame for installing this faulty software on all of the cars that misreported the carbon emissions, it does state that clearly there was a series of mistakes done. And I think what's most jarring is the board of directors declaration that they had no idea about it. On the one hand, I am inclined to believe the board of directors when they say that they didn't know about this, because ultimately, in situations such as these, the risk to reward ratio is just not worth it. The risk is way too high, and I think nobody is really winning in this situation, definitely not anybody from Volkswagen. However, this did make me think about the day-to-day aspects that we encounter in our lives as corporate worker, potentially tech workers, and how should we deal with situations where we're treading the line between doing something well for the company or slightly breaking the law or misreporting some things, that seemingly gray area. And I say seemingly because truthfully, it's not really a gray area, but oftentimes in the midst of things, it is made to seem like a gray area. The second reason why I wanted to do this video is that while the article points out that there's not one person to blame in this whole thing, I'm pretty sure at least a few people lower down in the ranks have lost their jobs over this scandal. And I really wanted to go over some things that you can do in order to, professionally cover your ass and make sure that when these things happen, it's not you losing your job or it is not you being potentially criminally charged for some errors in your field of work. These tips are in no particular order, so let's start with number one, document how your work works. This is especially true if you are in a position that builds things, builds systems, or builds infrastructure of any sort of kind. You have to take time to really write down in a Word document or in whatever other documenting platform that your company uses how things function. And as someone that works with software developers on the daily basis, I know that this is not the snazzy part of the job. Every time I ask my developers to document things, they roll their eyes a little bit and they're really asking, is this really a priority? Do we really have to do this right now? And the answer to this is yes. Not only do you have to document it in order to make it easier for other coworkers to understand how that system works, but it is vital that you actually share your documentation so that it is not a secret what you have done, what assumptions have gone into building your services, but also removes you from the path of potentially saying, we misused this service because we didn't understand what it was doing. You cannot say you cannot understand what it was doing because it was clearly described in this wonderful document or wiki page or docs page, whatever platform your company uses. Make sure you make the most of it. I also want to state that, again, as a product manager working in Scrum, I understand that Scrum is naturally inclined to technical debt. And not only that, it's also inclined to not keeping up with documentation. This should not discourage you from keeping up with your documentation. I understand that perhaps the service is finished and it's rolled out and the documentation is not fully up to date at that point in time, but please take some time out of your sprint or out of your quarter to make sure the documentation is up to date, at least for everything that is in production. My second tip is actually to raise whatever concern you have with your direct line manager. To be quite honest, the easiest, simplest step that you can take when you witness something that is not quite right, something that worries you, is to raise it with your manager. Oftentimes, if you're working in a healthy organization, this will immediately be addressed with their help and the problem will simply be resolved and you won't have to be worried about it anymore. Depending on how urgent you think this task is, you can either wait for your regular catch up with your manager, or you can just ping them and ask them if they have a quick 5 minutes to discuss something very important. Whatever you do, don't just sit on this information, because ultimately when it blows over, you might get asked by your manager, why didn't you tell me about this? And I especially encourage you to do this if you have a bad relationship with your manager, because if things are already rocky, if things are already not going well with your direct manager, then hiding a problem and letting it just fester and blow up later on is not going to improve your relationship anymore. Not to mention, if they're already out to get you because, yeah, sadly, horrible managers still exist to this day, then leaving this problem unaddressed can be potentially the final nail in your performance improvement plan coffin that will get you fired. The next tip that I have for you is actually related to raising a concern, but instead of just raising a concern, you're actually escalating this concern. And I think these are two different things, and we should understand when to use one or the other. Mainly, I wanted to include this section on escalating concerns because sometimes you raise a concern with your manager and it's just kind of brushed off. Nothing really happens, your manager doesn't really take it seriously, and you're still worried in the back of your head about what could potentially happen. This can be very frustrating for the person that is highlighting the issue because, again, you think there's a high impact problem coming our way like a boulder and nobody is taking it seriously and nobody is doing anything about it. So when this happens, when your direct manager just dismisses you, what should you do? Should you just let go of everything, pretend it never happened, hope for the best, or maybe none of the above? I'm going to go with none of the above. If you really see a very big issue coming towards your company, then you need to escalate this concern. My friends, this is where professional covering your ass 101 really kicks in. Like I've said previously in the video, it can happen that your manager is simply incompetent. They just don't understand what you are saying. But it can also happen that they are actually ill-intended and they are doing something shady. So in order not to take the fall for a mistake that is going to blow up later, even if your direct line manager dismissed it, it is time, my friends, to write the escalation email. It's not fun. It's not a great time for anybody, but you need to do it in order to protect yourself. The key to writing a good escalation email is actually to have it structured and containing all of the information. Ideally, on top, you would have an executive summary, just a few lines about what the problem is, what the impact is, and why it's urgent for it to be resolved. After this executive summary, you should go into full-blown details about how you found this problem, why the problem is a problem, what's going to happen if we don't fix it, how much time do we have to fix it? What are the actionable next steps to actually go and resolve this issue? You should include here any sort of documents, metrics, graphs, any sort of data points that help you prove this point to your leadership. I also do want to say that if you aren't sure what the next steps or how to fix this issue, you can also say that. You can say, given my level, given my current position, I cannot foresee what is the right course of action to fix this problem. However, I strongly believe that there is a problem that needs leadership attention, and this is why I am writing you this email. Please don't let the fact that you don't have an overall view of how to solve the problem stop you from writing this very important email. After you're happy with what you've written, you're going to package this up in a nice email, and then you're going to start adding people to the to and CC line. Of course, your direct manager should be the first person that you add in this email. Please do not skip them, and ideally also your manager's manager. Depending on the expected impact of this problem, you have to decide how high you need to go. For example, if this issue can potentially stop the course of business, really bring everything to a halt, I would say you should go really, really high. Why not put the CEO in that email? Of course, if you don't feel that you should go as high as the CEO, your next safest bets are directors, vice presidents, and senior vice presidents. And you should especially pick these people that are working in the departments that are impacted by the issue that you just noticed. Lastly, I also want to encourage you to understand what is your company's risk and compliance department look like, and who are the people that are responsible for working in the area where the issue is arising. One of the best moves that you can do is actually include people from risk and compliance into this email so that it is brought to their attention. Generally, these departments have a lot of power in saying how things should be done, because ultimately their job is to make sure that the work is compliant and risk-free. And I do have one last tip regarding this escalation email. put yourself in the CC line as well. This way you will also get a copy of this email and it won't get deleted after 30 days with the rest of your sent email. Perhaps a little bit more controversial advice at this point, but I would say make a copy of that email, download it, take a screenshot of it, and save that in your personal cloud drive. Not on the company drive, but on your personal cloud drive. Ultimately, if you've stumbled across a conspiracy of any sort, the fact that you are trying to whistleblow on it is going to cost you your job. Not to mention, they might turn back and actually blame you for everything. So you need to have proof that you found the problem and that you notified them before they actually fire you and cut access to all of your company laptop, cloud, phone, whatever it is that you're using. And there you go. Once you've sent that email, you are actually in the clear. It is up to management to start taking steps in order to fix the problem. Go ahead and thumbs up this video if you have had to send at least one email covering your ass or your team's ass in the past few months. However, I will be perfectly honest, if you do start seeing any sort of retaliation after sending that email, it may also be time to look for a new job. So I'm very sorry about that, but I'm not going to advise you to stay somewhere that punishes people bringing up issues. While the previous sections have been about us writing an email, I think it's about time we ask other people to write an email. I'm going to very poetically name this section just play dumb. Pretend like you don't understand. But let me give you a little bit more detail about what this means. When I was discussing this article with a few coworkers, they mentioned that it may have been a VP or somebody in leadership giving some hints as to what they would like to happen, but not outwardly really saying it. For example, we speculated that what if somebody at Volkswagen would say, wouldn't it be just so nice if we had some sort of a way to just round out those numbers, or maybe do a different calculation so the numbers look better? Wouldn't that just be so good? We'd all like meet our corporate targets, we get a bonus at the end of the year. I'm hoping that this is not actually what happened, but I can also see it happening, and some very proactive engineers and product managers saying, oh, actually, you know what, we can't do that. That is technically possible. Let us look into it. However, that is the worst possible action that you can take when in this kind of a situation. Any seasoned professional will be picking up on the subtext of what the other person is saying, meaning that we would like to bend the law, we would like to misrepresent some of these numbers, and how can we do it in a way that will withstand audit? It's very obvious that they're trying to elude something without saying it or putting it in writing, and that's where this tips comes in. First of all, you're going to play a little bit dumb here. Because they don't actually put anything in writing, they can argue that you simply misheard what they were saying, and they have plausible deniability because they're probably not very close to the work that you're doing. However, the team actually implementing this has no excuse. They don't have any proof that they were given a direct order to fraudulently mislead the authorities about carbon emissions, and yet when audit comes, these people will be taking the fall for implementing something that is not right, that is against the law. Because leadership has plausible deniability and the team building it ultimately does not, it can mean that these people are going to be subject to fines, they're going to be fired, and they could even go to jail depending on what they did. And I have to stress here what a damaging impact such an event will have on their careers. Who wants to hire Volkswagen guy that basically caused the company hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and stopping operations? Yeah, nobody. So if you see your senior leadership trying to allude to something that's not quite right, you're going to play dumb. You're going to say that you don't really understand. But if they could write you an email about it, you are happy to get right on that. Of course, if they are also a little bit savvy, they will actually not do this because, again, having something in writing is hard evidence that can be used in any sort of court of law. So again, they're going to try to stick to verbal communication even after you ask them to send an email, which you cannot let slide. I think you should insist again on them sending you an email, and if you see that they don't and they're still asking you why you didn't get to work, then play them again and say that you want to clarify the requirements over email. Send them an email and ask them to confirm by a certain date if this is correct or not. And last but not least, unfortunately, I do have to recommend that if you find that the issue you uncovered is really breaking the law, is hurting people, is in any way, shape, or form against the law, I do encourage you to go to the authorities as well. grab all of the data, grab all of the information that you found, especially if you have already escalated it and nothing is happening. Copy that to your personal cloud or your personal drive and send it along to whatever authority you think is best suited to look at this issue. This can be the Securities Exchange Committee, this could be a court of auditors, this could be a tax authority, whatever the type of problem you have found, there's definitely at least one governing body that is looking after that area. So please Google who that person is or who that institution is and go alert them as to what is happening in your company. I hope you find this video insightful, and yet I hope you also never have to use the advice that I just gave you. I hope you're never put in that position, but at least now, if it happens, you will know what to do. If you would like to find out more about how the corporate world works, then click subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. That's it for today. Have a good one.